Welcome back to the professional VMware vBrownbag Tech Talks at vForum in Sydney. My next guest is Chris Jones, who's going to talk to us about living in harmony with vCenter Orchestrator.
Great, thanks for that. So my name's Chris Jones. I'm a solution architect in the VMware space, and I'll be covering vCenter Orchestrator, what it is, and some use cases that you can use with vCenter Orchestrator. So Orchestrator is a little known gem in the vSphere suite. So in this presentation, I'll be giving 3 example use cases around customization of deployment, automating compliance activities, and building a self-healing environment. So vCenter Orchestrator is awesome, it's free, and it's already installed in your environment. So there's not many people who do either know about it or use it. So hopefully you can learn what vCenter Orchestrator is and harness the power to get some benefit out of it. So it's a workflow automation tool that you can use to automate the provisioning and operations within your environment, and it allows you to embark on that journey to IT as a service, which is what the rest of the industry is working towards now. It can also help reduce your operational expense and total cost of ownership, because you're doing less in the environment. It allows you to innovate more, which is where you want to move to. So it is a web-based tool and a client that you can extend onto vCenter. It's very simple to use with a library of workflows for the various plugins that you can have for vCenter Orchestrator, with a very intuitive interface that allows you to build these workflows. So on this slide here, we can see the VCO architecture that is effectively the workload engine that you can go and plug different plugins into. So vCenter Server, for example, is a plugin. vCloud, you can also have SSH plugins. There might be third-party plugins from like an IPAM provider or something. So there's multiple different ways that you can extend on the architecture and then integrate with it, which can help with your automation. So the first use case I'll talk about is customization of VM provisioning. So vCenter itself uses the workflows within Orchestrator to actually go and do these tasks that we do every day to provision new virtual machines. So you can use Orchestrator to do those basic steps for you, and then to integrate with other components within your infrastructure. And the examples that I'll be using is IPAM and DNS, and to automatically get all that information and assign it within your virtual machine. So the picture I've got here is deploying a template from a virtual machine, and I've shown you the workflow that works into within Orchestrator. So if you were in Orchestrator and wanted to just deploy a standard virtual machine, well, then there is a workflow that you can use and execute in order to achieve the same result. You can't really read this slide, but it's an example of how you of that workflow end to end and all the decision points that are within it. So when you execute this workflow, you get all the same questions as you would with doing it through the vSphere client, web client, or the C# client. You've got all the information for the virtual machine that you can input, but we're going to build on that to try and reduce the amount of questions that are asked to make it happen a little bit easier. So on this one here, this workflow for deploying a virtual machine has a lot of inputs that questions are asked when that workflow starts. In this example, I'm going to predefine a template, so when my users go and deploy virtual machines, they don't have to select the template. That's already in there for them. So I've gone and in the wizard there where it's asking for that template, I can actually go and link that template and that object, or that VC virtual machine object, with a template that already exists in my infrastructure. So then all the user has to do is say deploy virtual machine, and it'll already deploy the pre-existing template that I as the administrator have defined. So I can go and create an attribute within my workflow, assign it that VC virtual machine object, point it to a template within my environment, link that back into the input parameter, and then when I next run that workflow, I'm then going to see that the template is now no longer a question, because as I execute that workflow, I can enter in a name and all the other information, but just not the template. So the example there is that I can go and extend on either automatically generated information like host names if you use a particular naming convention, or VLANs, or networks you want to connect to, sorry. So then that way you've got fewer questions to ask when you're deploying a virtual machine. You can automate it much more efficiently. The best way that you can use Orchestrator is if you have a self-service tool within your environment that's not vCloud Director or vCAC, and you can go and integrate with the SOAP or REST API that vCenter Orchestrator exposes. So you can write something yourself to go and automate that provisioning of the virtual machine and create your own service catalog just using standard industry APIs. So I can use the workflows from the plugin library to extend the functionality that's already within my environment. I can reduce any potential errors by taking the human factor out of it and integrate with other infrastructure services like IPAM, DNS, Active Directory and all of that to automate that provisioning of the virtual machine. The second use case is around compliance automation. So I can use VCO and configure it to check settings within infrastructure to reduce the amount of time that I spend to check configuration and compliance settings. So a typical vSphere admin problem would be they want to make sure that their clusters have HA enabled, is configured correctly, and that DRS is fully automated. So if you're in an environment where you do add a new host and you have the percentage calculation set, you may find that over time, as you add more hosts and you don't change that setting, that it becomes very inefficient. So there are three areas here that I want to check. I want to check the settings for my percentage, as I mentioned, the enable host monitoring, and then also I want to make sure the DRS is fully enabled. So then onto the next slide, I can see the workflow that I've gone and created here. So I'm feeding in or generating, I've got a scriptable task there to actually get a list of all the clusters. I've then got a workflow action to actually execute the DRS and HA setting, and then I've got another decision point at the end of that to check for any other clusters within my environment, and then actually log those results. So I've extended here the first step, so I actually want to get a list of all my clusters, run a HA calculation, make a decision as to what I want to do, and then actually execute the function. So I've just got some code here that you may not be able to read, but basically that is the Java that you would use in order to create those scriptable functions that I've mentioned. So it's gone grab the clusters, it's grabbed the settings, calculated an appropriate HA level for an n-1 failure, and then it's going to apply that onto the infrastructure. So that's the extent of that code. The little gotcha that I've got there is you want to make sure that the settings that you continuously apply don't override any affinity rules that you've got. That's caught me out a couple of times, so just be mindful of that. So I've then, when I can run that workflow as a cron job or once a month or however often I want to run it, and I can automate the verification of whatever I've designed, and I can also use other settings in the same principle and the same idea to then also check not only design compliance but regulatory compliance and all the settings associated with that. So you can also then configure VCO to automatically either remediate them if you're brave enough, or you can just inform your admins to say that your clusters are not configured as they should be and you have a risk within your environment. The last use case that I'll talk about is this concept of a self-healing virtual data center. So you can actually configure VCO to receive SNMP traps from your infrastructure monitoring tools like or Operations Manager, and it can automatically perform remediation. So a typical use case, if a data store alarm is triggered for vCenter, you want to initiate the storage DRS workflow to remediate it. So here's the concept of it. So you've got the alarm is triggered in vCenter, the trap is sent to VCO, and then you want to trigger the storage DRS process in order to remediate that storage pool. So here's the workflow. Again, I want to go a scriptable task to interpret the trap. I then want to make a decision as to what I want to do with that trap. So have I got my my workflow configured to receive that kind of notification? And then if I do, then I actually want to initiate the run SDRS workflow, which is just a standard workflow within the vCenter library, within vCenter Orchestrator. So I can configure this to, or configure VCO to receive these traps, to trigger appropriate workflows and to notify and potentially remediate, as I said, if you're brave enough to want to do that. So this can reduce the amount of time that you're spending operationally within your environment, and you can potentially turn VCO into your new level 1 support team to either do the reporting, do the analysis, and potentially remediation. And then it allows you to then go and focus on all the innovative stuff that everyone at vForum talks about. So they're the 3 use cases. So in a nutshell, vCenter Orchestrator is awesome, and it's amazing that not many people either know about it or use it. And if you don't use it, it is free. It's already installed in your environment. Make sure you just have a look at it because the power of it is absolutely amazing, and it can benefit you greatly. So I've got some blogs there from the VCO blog, team website, my blog. Follow me on Twitter. vCenter Orchestrator. It's great.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks very much for filling us in. It's a pretty regular comment by people who are using vCenter Orchestrator that they're amazed more people don't use it.
Absolutely.
I guess one of the key learnings is to go out and start using it.
Exactly, yep.
Thanks very much. This has been another of the vBrownbag Tech Talks at vForum in Sydney, and thank you very much to Nutanix, whose sponsorship has made it all possible.